Hey everybody, happy Sunday evening. It's week 6 on the transcribers and we're going to talk about gender roles today. I've done a little bit of research to this so I didn't come off ignorant, and hopefully I don't. So we're going to answer a couple of questions. The first one is, how important are gender roles to you? And to me, defining roles are not important. It's just kind of a matter of, are my roles equal and opposite of my partner's? And that's just kind of about chemistry, yin and yang. What did you say it was about earlier?
How the cookie crumbles.
It's just how the cookie crumbles. You know, I have certain roles, and it's just because of who I am that I take on. I like to cook. I like to drive. I'm not someone who cleans. But he's someone who just falls into different roles. He takes the trash. He's good with electronics. He's my handyman. Things like that. But they're just because of who we are. I don't, seek out certain roles because, like I said, it's just a matter of chemistry. Do I think that trans men adopt a traditional masculine role when they transition? I know that is not true for Todd, that he's just always been masculine. So the transition was simply a matter of a physical confirmation of who he is. However, I think since transitioning, the opportunity for him to be outwardly masculine has presented itself more often, and he has been glad to accept that and become comfortable in those roles socially, I would say. Because he really always wanted to be in those roles, and was in some of those roles already, honestly. But some of them he had just been denied because he was physically presenting female. And now that he is physically presenting male, he can engage in a lot more masculine activity, I guess. He likes it. Do we think that trans men reject their femininity, and why? And I would say no if it's who you are already, but that femininity comes on a sliding scale for all guys, bio and trans. I have bio guy friends who are very effeminate, but Todd personally was just always very masculine. So he rejects femininity just like a bio guy would reject femininity, or any person would, just based on who they are. And I know that it also is variant for all trans people, that some reject their female bodies and some don't, that varies just person to person about how you feel. Does our society think that sex is binary? And does it think that gender is binary? And I do think yes, society feels that both gender and sex are very binary and boxed off, male, female. But I also think, biology presents a binary picture, talking about percentages, essentially. The majority of the time you deal with an XX or an XY, male, female. But of course, what do I specifically think? I think that on the whole, there is a binary male-female, but I think that comes in a variety of forms. So it's not so black and white. How important is masculinity in general, and how important does it seem to trans men? Well, it's kind of like we've already talked about, but masculinity is just a big part of who Todd is, before and after and during, and it's just is what it is. So it's important for him to be masculine because it's important for him to be him. And I think this is why it would vary. Someone who doesn't feel very masculine regardless of their body, when they transition, we're not saying you have to feel like you need to be very masculine. I know that the term hypermasculine, talks about someone who wants to take on those roles. I guess it talks about, liking cars and shoot 'em up video games and fishing and hunting and sports and fast cars and chivalry, opening doors and carrying heavy objects for the fairer sex. And Todd does all of those things, and if that's hypermasculinity, then that's just who he is. That's not something he has strived to become, and it's not a derogatory term in that sense, as far as I know. But if that's hypermasculinity, then that's just something that he has always been. It is not because he's trans. It's because he wants to be, and he is.
Yeah, always. Honey.
All those things. He was those things, forever ago, and will always be those things. Excuse me. What does society define as masculine? And do our partners follow that pattern of behavior? And it's kind of like the hypermasculinity. I think that's what society kind of defines masculine as. And even though Todd may fit those roles, that doesn't mean everybody has to. So really and truly, like I mentioned my straight friend earlier who is very effeminate, he probably has just as hard a time in society because people, may assume he's gay. So I think anybody who strays from a norm in that sense, it doesn't have to do with trans, masculine, If you are, you are, and if you're not, you're not, and society should be okay with that, trans or not. Yeah. Do you consider us to be gender variant, and what is the difference between gender variants and transsexuals? I'm not sure who the us is in this question. I personally am not gender variant, I don't think, because from my research, the definition of gender variance is being outside of the norm for the roles. But I am a pretty typical girl. I like being a girl. I'm not hyper feminine so much, but I think I probably am not too much of a variant. But I think gender variance, again, from what I looked up, it encompasses a whole lot of things. And transsexuals are a very specific category of people who need a physical confirmation of who they are, not for society, but for themselves, because they feel one way and they need their body to align that. Their body needs to match their mind. And so I think that's what's different. I think perhaps gender variance could encompass, butch lesbians, for example, because they aren't in the norm role that someone would expect for a female. So I think, the majority of the people here in this community that are, that we're all partners of, are transsexuals. And then the last is, what is the difference between sex and gender, and why are both important? And we kind of talked about this earlier, but sex is just the phenotype and the physical presentation, and gender is the inside, the mind part. Who do you feel you are? And they're both important because you usually want them to match up. I know that's the case with Todd. His gender is male, and we need his sex to match because that will make him complete and make him happy. And life's too short not to be happy. So we're on that journey to be happy, and everyone should be, and anyone who's brave enough to is doing a good thing for themselves. So I think that's all I have to say about gender roles. Be who you are, regardless of labels and roles and what anybody else wants you to be. So have a great week and love yourself. Yeah.